this dialogue with you is called DefDialogue, and we want to concentrate with this DefDialogue is there a role of technology, digital technology, in considering non-script languages or oral languages to save them, preserve them, convert them into something which can be saved for future life, rather than all the time talking about that yesterday we were 800 languages, today we are 700 languages, tomorrow will be 600 languages. So I would, first question would be that, what do you, how do you define vanishing languages vis-a-vis, is there a chance of saving them? That's where I will start the first question.
Okay.
Yeah.
First thing, I'm very happy to come to know of DEF. I did not know of it, and I have been in Delhi all my life. But anyway, never mind. It's never too late, as they say, whenever you get the knowledge of. And I think you are in the right direction, because now in this modern world, digitization is the only hope that we have of saving languages, preserving languages, so that they can be either revived or reclaimed, whichever is the possibility. Languages can be revived if the documentation is possible in a digital format. Language can also be reclaimed because there's something to go back in the spoken form. Yes, it is true that we have more than 700 to 800 languages in India, which never came under the orthography umbrella. So they don't even have the scripts. I never say that they should have their script of their own. There is nothing like script of their own. Let me first do away with this kind of a misnomer that every language should have a script of its own. English, French, German, Spanish, they don't have the scripts of their own. English also does not have its own script. It's a Roman script. So the Roman script has been borrowed by all these Romance languages and Indo-European languages. They never bothered about their own script. So we should not think about having individual script, because that also brings illiteracy across the states. If we hamper on our own script, like Old Chiki is having this problem. You see, the Jharkhandis created Old Chiki for Santhali, but how many Old Chiki speakers, readers and writers can read Hindi or English, or the, in a reverse way? So we should not emphasize on an own script. Maybe Devanagari, which is a very scientific script, can be adopted, or Roman script, depending upon communities' will, can be adopted or adapted to each and every language, number one. Second is that till the languages come under this gamut of orthography and scripting these languages, I had been promoting, and I've been asking the government of India for last several years to open a national commission for scripting languages, but that has never come up so far. Nonetheless, till then, the digitization is the only recourse. And when I say digitization, I mean that you have to have audio-video recordings of the oral languages in all its realm, not just the folklore. Because you see, there is nothing in life that does not use language. You use language in scolding, you use language in communication, you use language for talking to your children, you use language for the indigenous knowledge. And that's what is my second point, that the indigenous knowledge or the indigenous vocabulary that you have in these languages is not translatable. It's not translatable. You cannot, there are something to the tune of 18 kinds of smells in Great Andamanese. And I'm sure they had many more, but it's lost because by the time I reached the islands, the language was on the verge of extinction. There were 1,500 names in Koraput, Odisha, of rice varieties before the Green Revolution came. And every variety of 1,500 is not a small number. Every variety of rice tasted different. And people say, when I was talking to them now, they said that earlier we could taste our rice so well that we did not need dal, we did not need sabzi, and rice alone was enough. Now we put everything, masala and everything, still the rice does not taste as good. Well, this could be just a biased attitude, but nonetheless, the fact that the variety of rice grew in different kind of environment, and maybe it was environmental friendly, They did not need any special kind of manure. So, all these things which are indigenously captured in oral languages are much, much more than what we have in our written forms. So this orality has to be captured, and that can be captured only in digitization form. Similarly, when we were working on Toda communities and Mulukurumba communities in south of India, we realized they have variety kinds of mushrooms growing in the field, which now are no more there because of the tea plantation. There's no doubt that the tea plantation brought a lot of economic development and money to the community. But each and every mushroom that they had also had medicinal properties, had different kinds of other properties, which are lost to them because the mushrooms got lost. The referent gets lost, and the reference also gets lost. And this is the reason that languages have to be saved. You see, some people say, why do you want to make a language like a pickle and preserve it? Well, as I said in the beginning, that, the preservation is needed in case, we cannot force the community, but in case the community wants to reclaim it, like it happened with Israelis, right? Hebrew was totally lost. But when Israel came up, people wanted their own language to be reclaimed, and they really reclaimed languages. But you'll be surprised to know when you reclaim the language, it's never the original form. It comes back with different kind of forms. For example, today's Hebrew, actually linguists don't want to call it Hebrew because it is an amalgamation of Yiddish, Russian, and Hebrew, you see, and that's the language of Israel. So similarly, when the languages are reclaimed, they depend upon the largest number of documentation. Written documentation helps, but written documentation cannot help the pronunciation, cannot help how the language was sung, how the language was pronounced, how the language was used for communication, the intonation pattern, the gestures, everything, you see. So digitization is the only hope, as I said, and it is the biggest hope we have of saving and preserving the language for the future prosperity. The second thing is, what I have felt during my course of field work in the last 35, 40 years, is this, that the digitization of especially the tribal languages or the lesser known languages, or let me put it another word which generally people use, marginalized languages. You see, it's a step towards fighting discrimination against linguistic apartheid. And have written about it also, because the gulf that we have created already between what is written and what is not written is a very, very big gulf. So what is written is considered of low standard. What is not written is considered of low standard, of deprived of some development. And also because of that even the community is considered uneducated and lackeys. On the contrary, the languages which have not been written down so far, the more and more you get into it, you realize that the people are very educated. I always used to tell my students, don't call them uneducated. These communities are very educated. They are not literate. And they are not literate in our scripts. But that doesn't mean they are not educated. The knowledge of environment, the knowledge of survival and sustenance that these communities have, no one has. You remember what happened in Tsunami? We lost 5,000 people in Andaman Nicobar. Not a single death among the Andaman tribes. Not a single death. Why? If you remember on 26 December, I think it was 26 December 2004, early morning, when the tsunami came, they were all fishing by the side of the seashores. And one community known as Jarawa, when they saw the waves coming in, they immediately recognized the pattern of the waves. And they ran into the forest to a higher point to save themselves. And they called everybody to go on the higher point, and they saved themselves. And this, I asked when one of my students was at that time in the Jarawa Reserve doing PhD, collecting material for PhD. When he interviewed them, they said that our parents had told that when you see waves like this ever in the sea, run for your life, because that means a pralaya is going to come. What happened with the Onges, the another tribe living in the Little Andaman, they were also fishing by the side of the sea in the morning. And they saw the kinds of fishes you never see on the top of the surface of the seawater or by the side of this. Actually, this experience of them and my interviewing them and writing about them later informed me, which I did not know of, and every tribe knew, that the sea has 3 levels. One is the top level where you get fishes and you catch them fishes and you eat every day. Then there's a middle level, which is a twilight level, and the sun rays don't penetrate those levels very strongly there. Those fishes are very rarely to be seen on the surface of the sea. And then there's a deepest level of the sea, which is a dark level. And those sea fishes never come up. Now, these Onges saw those fishes of the second level coming up when the sea wave was, churning out of the sea waves of the height of 10 feet and 15 feet. They knew that before even the 10 feet, they knew that something is going to havoc has come run. They didn't have any raised platform kind of a thing in their jungle, but they went deep into the forest to save themselves, and everybody got saved. So, this is the interesting indigenous knowledge which they had logged in their language, but they are very educated. And we lost other 5,000 people who had no knowledge. Most of the Nicobaris got swayed lost in the sea. Yeah, in the tsunami. So, there are many stories like that of survival that you can think of, and then you get to know through these languages. So I think digitization definitely is very important. Your question that what is the methodology for that, you need a big a kind of a lecture to be prepared. I can give systematically, but if you had in mind that the digitization starts first with the recording, what you are doing right away. So because these are oral languages, you have to decide what actually decision is taken only after reaching the field, but you have to decide which is more important for this language to be recorded first. But try to record as much as possible in different domains. You see, when language dies, it is not a single phenomena. It's not a one-time phenomena. Language dies when there is a diminishing, speedily diminishing domains of use of the language.
I wanted to ask you a question. I mean, one is that everything that you are saying is that absolutely what we believe, and I have been thinking that, the whole world's development has been subjected to literacy and education from the perspective of what is written and what is not written. If you know how to read and write, you become literate. And if you do not know how to read and write, you are not literate and educated. And then therefore it become an economic issue, and then it's become a power issue. So which means the world has developed and considered and converted one or few languages as a power language or the control language. That's and right. The rest of the people who are not imbibed that. I mean, for example, let's say if our Bo mother was English knowing as well as Bo knowing, she would have actually been known to everybody in the world and whatever. But since she only knew her own language and she did not bother about other language, I mean, she vanished, and therefore many other languages will continue to do that. So, but what is very important that you are saying is that language is just not a language. Language is wisdom. Language is actually deep knowledge. And contextual also that you are saying. I mean, the language also defines food, the language also defines agriculture, the language also defines art and culture, language also defines sciences, actually. Science also. What practices did you do, how to build a house, or how did you save yourself from the sun or the heat or the cold, and so on and so forth. And like you are very clearly saying is that to know the language properly, you have to talk to them contextually. To find out the deeper sense of the language and the deeper wisdom of the language. So my question is that if that is so, how did we as a world and the developing world afford to lose so many languages? Because that means we really wanted to lose the world's wisdom.
Yeah, because of the seizure of the intergeneration transfer. the languages live through the generations. You see, we stopped learning the languages of our grandmothers, grandparents, and so the intergeneration transfer stopped. And this is how the languages started dying. And the domination and the subjugation by a few economically powerful people over the others certainly made this process much faster than ever. So this is how the languages one by one, died. In India, the situation is not as though the UNESCO says we have the largest number of endangered languages, but we also have a larger number of surviving languages, you see. So percentage wise, it's not as great. However, because Indian language policy had been 3-language formula policy in education, we have at least maintained a couple of languages. But language formula actually failed in the north. It did work only in the south, as you know. But leave aside the education policy because Government of India could not make us survive the languages. What survives are multilingualism. As you know, 5 languages you say, but you learned some of them at official level or at a formal level. But think of an ordinary average Indian child, when he comes to school, he or she comes to school, he already knows 3 languages, minimum 3 languages. So we grow up in a multilingual environment and our languages have survived. In fact, I will now talk a little bit about the survival of the languages rather than endangerment, because we must know this aspect also. You see, our multilingualism or our bilingualism that we have in India is not competitive type. It's a complementary type. And that's what has made us survive the languages. See, we use English for one aspect. Yeah. So, for example, you use Bhojpuri at home domain and only with among some certain number of people or the relatives that who know Bhojpuri or who can speak and understand Bhojpuri. Among the same family members or extended family, you may not be using Bhojpuri, you may be using Hindi because that Bhojpuri is not very good. And then when you go out of this home, at formal level, you're using English. Or maybe you're using, I do not know where your Bhojpuri is surviving. Is it in Bihar or is it in UP? Depending upon, and you may know another language, let's say Maghi or, Awadhi if you are in the Uttar Pradesh. So, 3 or 4 languages, automatically you say, actually, because every language has its own role and function to play in the society. So what English plays the role, Hindi doesn't play. What Hindi plays the role, Bhojpuri does not play. So our multilingualism is very complementary to each other. And all together make a unison, one whole, and one whole personality. So you can't say that my identity is about Bhojpuri. That's why in India, we very rarely, we are dumbstruck when somebody says, is this language your identity? And you cannot say yes. Because their identity is constituted of so many languages. So many languages and each language has its own importance in your life. So, and maybe singing, that's another aspect. Some people sing only in particular dialect, because they know the folk songs. For example, in many family members of mine, because my parents came from Braj area, Agra and Mathura, they only used to sing in Braj. They did not know any song in Hindi or in any other language, but they have stopped speaking Braj, you see. So each language has its own role to play. And this beautiful mosaic of amalgamating, this beautiful mosaic of each language surviving in its own respect has made our languages survive for a long time. Now what is happening in this modern education policy, multilingualism is killed. The moment the child comes to the school at the age of 4 or 5, the teacher says, you forget your mother tongue, you forget your language, you only know this. And in most of the English schools, you are punished for speaking in your mother tongue. You see? So this attitude has actually initiated the process of language endangerment. And that was also the reason why I noticed, even in the rural areas, and when I was working on Kudukh community in Jharkhand, mothers bashing their children for speaking in Kudukh. And I asked them, why are you bashing her? He said, madam, agar Hindi nahi bolega, to aapka jaisa kaise banega? Isko to bada aadmi banna hai. You see, this fact, this ideology which has been homed in every tribal community, that you have to learn Hindi, is very unbecoming of robbing their knowledge, robbing their indigenous identity. And I have, when I was working on in Chhattisgarh, I was amazed at that I visited. Can I tell an anecdote?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, I went to I was just surveying some schools, and I went to a rural school, and this was a girls' school. Something like 10, 15 kids were standing outside in scorching heat, maybe 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and I was very much amazed at why they have been punished in the sun, you see. And I asked them in Hindi, why are you being punished? They could not answer me. So I went inside, and the teacher was sitting to his glory listening to some radio. And I said, and I asked him in Hindi, I said, why have you punished all the girls and they're standing in the sun? This is not fair. He says, I asked them questions, they did not answer. Not a single person answered. And I taught them yesterday. So it's good, let them stand in the sun. So I said, so by that time, I had acquired some Chhattisgarhi. So I came out and I asked them in Chhattisgarhi that why did you not answer the question when the teacher asked you? Everybody said, madam, he was asking us in Hindi. We don't understand Hindi. So we didn't answer. So I said, this is ridiculous. So I went inside again and asked the teacher what mother tongue you speak. He says, Chhattisgarhi. I said, what's your problem? You speak Chhattisgarhi. Your children speak Chhattisgarhi. Why can't you teach in Chhattisgarhi? So he put out he just showed me the NCERT book. He says, I have to teach from this book. So you see, this is what is happening. Now the children are intelligent. They have so much knowledge. They come to the school, rather than enhancing their knowledge and adding something to it. It's a reductionist policy of education. You have to reduce whatever they already have. And you make them
it's like making your knowledge and wisdom subject to the language and literacy of some other language.
But listen, just look at the psychological aspect that the psychological feeling that the children are going through. They are made to feel down, you see. And while I was talking to the teacher, 2 girls fainted, and they were brought inside and everything moved into Chhattisgarhi. Then everybody was looking after the girl. Teacher was also talking in Chhattisgarhi. I said, this is amazing. This is the situation all over India. So we kill our bilingualism, we kill the ability to express ourselves in the languages that we are very much good at. And so when they go back, these children go back home, of course, the parents will say, you speak in Hindi, don't speak in your mother tongue. So we are killing our languages.
So do you think that considering the diversity of language in India, considering the population, which is considerable, more than 10,000 people is speaking a particular language in India is very high number. It's not a small number, several languages, even if you go by the number of economy or number of the people who are following. And now that, NEP is there, and then this digital world has come up where everybody is having tablets and the digital way of teaching, learning, imbibing. Most of the children have started accessing educational tutorial or educational content in oral languages, in video and audio and so on and so forth. Do you think that we should have a policy of local indigenous language as well as the national language or whatever some couple of official language, but also local language in digitally, embedded content or something?
Certainly. You see, the new education policy 2020 is a step forward in one way because it does advocate teaching in mother tongue. Right. Though the problem is that when Government of India floated this, I'm sure they had no conception that we have 1,639 mother tongues. This is the official record. Now 2021, or 2020 to 2011 census, you see, that we have 1,639 mother tongues. These are the classified ones. Unclassified are something to the tune of 1,900. You see, so I'm sure the Government of India did not mean that they are going to prepare teaching material in 1,369 languages plus. Anyway, but the the motivation is good, intention is good, and I'll be happy if they can churn out some teaching material at a stage of class 1 in the local language. When I say local language, I mean the language adopted by majority of the community of that rural area. You see, generally that can be done. It's
and
not
irrespective of scripting.
Yeah. So that, you see, when you ask this question, the digital material will help. I said yes, very, very prominent, very with a force, because promptly, and also with a force, because I think the oral tradition should not be killed. And that should be continued at least in class kindergarten. Preparatory classes, the 4 block that the government of India has now made of the initial education. In those 4 blocks, oral tradition should be maintained, which used to be one of the phenomena of Indian education before the Britishers came to us. After all, Vedas were also transferred orally, right? They were written down.
Exactly.
This is the whole proof of our oral tradition. And our oral tradition is much, much richer, Osama, than the written tradition.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of variation. There's a lot of diversity. You traverse from Chhattisgarh to Madhya Pradesh, from the adjacent states, and Madhya Pradesh to Jharkhand to Uttar Pradesh. There's such a variety of oral tradition. And in the oral tradition, children learn very fast.
Absolutely.
This also has been proved.
Because it's a natural medium.
Yeah, it's a natural medium. If you remember when you mugged up your pahadas or the tables, you did it orally, right? If the teacher had given you the written form and said, okay, go and cram it up, it would have been very difficult for you.
So and even now, somebody talks in Excel and 1 2s are 2. I close my eyes and I go 2 2 4 2 3 6 2 6. और उसके बाद then come back and saying in English कि अच्छा इसका मतलब ये होता है. And then how did you do it fast? I said I closed my eyes and went back to my oral language.
Exactly, and we were taught tables till 20. These days, and I was even with my grandchildren also. They say 5 6, and for me it takes a while to find out what is 5 6, but 6 5 comes out easily.
Exactly.
So the oral, what I was trying to emphasize, that the oral tradition is not only just speaking in a narrative style, but it has songs in it. In fact, I've written that also. I have produced some books when I was in Sahitya Academy as a honorary chairperson of the newly opened Center for Oral and Tribal Literature. That you see, the orality has interesting. The entire oral narrative does not know the boundaries that we have created in a written literature. So we have fiction, we have poetry, prose, drama, everything else, and the performing arts are totally separate. So in other words, we have so many divisions. Look at the oral tradition. They have no division. Look at the Patchitra Katha in Odisha. How do they do it? The 2 people start singing something, and then after a couple of couplets, they move into narrations like a prose. Then again, the couplets come and somebody takes a sarangi, and then, it's they are singing the whole thing, what they have narrated, or they have instrument, and the instrument, they're actually trying to emote the same feelings as they have emoted in the narration and in poetry, and then move on to the painting. And the entire painting of Patchitra Katha is the summary of the narration they just said. You see? So from moving on from couplets to a storytelling to music, and sometimes dance also is accompanied. Some ladies dance when they're singing and playing this sarangi, and then painting the whole thing. Now, where are the divisions between the performing arts and the other, other arts of speech? So, that's why I say oral tradition is very important. Whatever the local oral tradition is there of the community, it should be imbibed in our education policy, at least in the first 3 years. So children will be also interested in the school. The dropout rates will be reduced. Now the dropout rates are very high in Chhattisgarh, which I was investigating, is because of the Hindi. Hindi should not have been imposed. If they were teaching in Chhattisgarhi, children would have come every day. Why would you go to a school where you cannot understand anything? So, and if the oral tradition is brought in, all the more reason the schools become more interesting. You see? And we have been somehow been misinformed that the oral tradition will make us backward or lackey in some way. On the contrary, if we bring in this tradition to the school, to the class, we will learn a lot.
Actually, if oral was anything lesser than written, the nature would not have given birth to us
exactly.
with oral ability to pronounce and say and things with lisp and everything, because this human body is a machine. It's a machine which has the capacity of a camera as well as the sound and video all doing something, and taking voices to this one. So tell me, which are the 10 most endangered language in India that one should really worry about?
Well, it will be difficult to immediately point out the 10 most endangered languages, but most of the endangered languages are in Jammu and Kashmir, especially in Kashmir.
Really?
Yeah, most of the endangered languages. Yeah, there are tribal languages and the non-tribal languages, but they are in Jammu and Kashmir, and there are some languages which are very much endangered in Northeast, which are of Tibeto-Burman branch. And of course, Great Andamanese, there are only 3 speakers left. So this is the most endangered. In fact, it is almost going gone type of situation. The other 2 languages of the Andaman Islands, like Jarwa and Onge, will live for another 50 to 70 years because of the intergeneration transfer that I talked about earlier.
Okay.
Most of them are monolingual, and they do transfer their language to the next generation, and children are also speaking languages. So somehow becomes endangered when the only speakers in the community are left are those who are your grandparents' age.
Right.
If you see a community where you think that the people who are speaking their language are of only grandparents' age, then it's sure set the language has set on the path of extinction.
Right. Of course.
So these are some of the languages which have, I can send you the list of those languages which have not more than 60 speakers left, not more than 100 speakers left. Yeah.
There are really? Good.
Yeah, there are quite a few which have the less than 100 speakers left. But languages change every day, But
so
yes,
what if I tell you...
Mm-hmm.
What if I tell you that, this may be part of the interview as well as the part of the next steps that we can do, because we always believe in doing something, constructive. So what if, let's say, Digital Empowerment Foundation says that if you guide us to create a digital methodology to save languages, and we also say that we will create a cell or a division of digital preservation of extinct languages or languages at the edge of extinction, and create a small little body. And we abhi aapne jo bola ki, the languages which are below 60 number of people speaking may be the first step that we develop methodology, then we create a kind of number of people who can go and start recording based on the methodology, and they start creating something like what you call as Wikipedia of endangered languages or something. I don't know what exactly, but something like that. If you think that you can guide, then we'll be very happy to create a initiative out of it, and we can start some function on it, and gradually we'll be happy. We are resourceful enough to bring in more fund into it and do it, because I really feel that it's हम सब ने research किया, सब कुछ किया, आप लोगों ने किया, you have highlighted all the issues. You cannot alone do everything, exactly. So if we have a means to do it, if we can our technological know how to do it, if we have also resources to do it. Just for example, if I tell you, DF has got about 1,600 centers all over the country, in about 24 states. Where we have digital center, broadband connectivity, and rural person who has mobile and all the infrastructure doing work at a local level, and they are associated with us. So if we can train some of them, they can just go around and start doing this. हमको यहाँ से अंडमान सबको travel करके नहीं जाना होगा. We don't have to go to. We have 2-3 centers in Kashmir. We have centers in Arunachal. We have center in Assam. We are opening center in Manipur. We are, I mean, so in 24 states, we have center. They are trained in doing surveys. They are trained in doing data collection. They are trained in doing interviews. They are trained in dealing public's problem and things like that. So they are very much there. And we can always do a TOT. You know, this is how you have to use recorders. This is the way you have to record. This is the way you have to transfer, because they, in any case, report on a daily basis to us on WhatsApp, on digitally, on Zoom, on other ways, and Excels and all that. So they are capable, but they, all of them are not working at any preservation work on heritage or culture or language, but they all are local language people, because we always hire or inspire such people to be from the local area. We never send from outside. So yeah, I mean, very wide. I mean, for example, if you want to do ke acha Chhattisgarh mein koi hai ki nahi, Jharkhand mein, I mean, Ranchi mein we have about 30, 40 such people. So what I'm saying is that we are in that position to do something and easy to do, rather than जैसे मान लीजिए हम ये plan बनाएंगे, फिर लिखेंगे, फिर उसके बाद fund raise करेंगे, then we will start doing it. No, we can, I mean, I can tell you, if we work out the methodology, we can start in 3-4 languages immediately. To start collecting the data with very little investment.